everybody, and welcome to Sunday Brunch. I am your host, RM, and of course, we have with us today Russ Whitfield. Russ, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's been a pretty sedate Sunday. Watched the boxing last night with a special guest round at my house. Why don't you tell everyone where you are right now, RM?
I certainly will, guys. I am in London and I am staying with Russ right now at Russ's house. I'm here for Star Wars Celebration and sightseeing and all that good stuff. So I am not in the States right now. I am in London on my London trip here to the UK, staying with Russ. So it looks like we're in two different places. We're actually in his house, and he's in one room and I'm in another, and we're on our computer. So we have, uh, it looks like we're separate places, but we're actually in the same place.
The wonders of modern technology.
Yes, the wonders of modern technology. Russ, first of all, thanks for having me over, Russ. You are so kind to let me stay with you
That's only a
during
pleasure.
this stay. And it is just a beautiful it's fortunately my flight was great and the weather is beautiful today. The sun is shining. Just enjoying a Sunday here and legitimately Sunday brunch. Just enjoying ourselves on a Sunday. And I hope everybody here as well. We have Gary Vando Sandridge Worthington who says Mando has gone all Wamando.
I haven't been catching up on it, Gal. I'm not gonna lie. I meant to this week, and I just didn't. But that doesn't matter because we're gonna get onto the topic of today's show in a little while.
Absolutely. And Tom Jr. Jackson is saying hello and welcome to all Sunday Brunch Live. Please click that like and subscribe button. And thanks for supporting the channel. Absolutely. Everybody, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoy Sunday Brunch as much as we do, we would certainly appreciate it. And Mario Lopez says hello, everyone.
Hey, Mario.
So good to see you, Mario. It's such a pleasure as always. Thalia Meyer is here. Hello, Thalia.
Hey, yeah.
And Darth Plato. Hey, Darth Plato says, I'm physically and mentally prepared for brunch. Yes, Darth Plato, I made it finally. Okay, I'm here finally, Darth Plato. So, yeah. And Retro Nerd Girl says, Good morning. Well, good morning to you, Retro
Hey,
Nerd Girl,
Retro.
with her coffee and donuts ready to start this day. Good morning to you, my dear. Such a pleasure to see you as always. Gosh. And we also have, who else do we have here? Did I give Joe Tyson? Joe
Big
Tyson
Joe. Big
here.
Joe's in the chat. Hey, man. How you doing?
Joe Tyson, such a pleasure to see you today. Such a pleasure to see all of you. Hope everybody is doing well. Certainly, and Nathan, oh, Norwegian Kryptonian. Hey,
Hey.
Norwegian Kryptonian, how are you? Did you make the member call yesterday? Guys, I missed the member call yesterday because I was on a plane. So there was no way I could be to that at that call, but I'm sure hope you guys had fun during the member call. I'm guessing Robert probably went like 7 or 8 hours, right? Right, Tom? Yeah, I hope everybody is doing well. Certainly glad to see you. Nathan is here. Hello, Nathan Trujillo.
All right,
Nathan
Nathan.
says, good morning, Artem and Russ. Well, good morning to you. And we have also Mighty Orbots. Hi, Mighty Orbots. How are you today? Hope you're doing great. Always great to see you, Mighty Orbots. And Bonzo Kilborn, who says, Artem starting off the week with a foxy lady. Can't beat that. Oh,
Oh, and
Bonzo
RM.
Kilborn, for your kind words. I so appreciate it. And it was a 6-hour call. That's what I thought, Tom. I thought it might be an extra long call. Sure. Hope you guys had fun during that call. Well, I was on a plane, Tom. I was on a plane flying across the Atlantic while you guys were on the member call, so I couldn't really hang out then. And of course, I had to leave last night's or the night before last night's musings a little bit earlier because I had to rush off to the airport to catch that plane so I could fly over, guys. So, yeah, just really glad to be here in the UK. It feels great. Just so happy, having such a great time. Um, Tom, I saw John Wick 4. And this is what today's discussion is going to be mostly about, guys. John Wick 4, part 4. And I can bring us in closer. It's mostly going to be about John Wick part 4 because I saw John Wick Part 4. Russ saw John Wick Part 4. Tom, you've seen it. This show is going to be about how incredible John Wick Part 4 was. Yes, Tom, I was so happy you were on Musings. I'm so happy you were on, Tom. I'm always asking you to go on onto the Musings at some point. We need to make that a regular thing for you to be on there. But I was so happy, Tom. You used to go on all the time. Um, so I'm just really happy that you are on there now. Tom, we need to get you back on there more regularly. But guys, we're going to be talking about John Wick 4, and there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen John Wick 4, if you have not seen this film, um, uh, I just warn you, I've got the banner at the bottom. And hello, Jamin D.
Hey,
Hi,
Jamin.
how are you? Um, if you have not seen John Wick 4, guys, this is going to be a super spoiler review. We're going to go, this is going to be a deep dive, in depth, everything and everything John Wick, everything that you could possibly imagine about John Wick 4, we're going to be discussing today. So I have to warn you, warning, warning, warning. This is a spoiler review. We're going to talk about everything in John Wick 4, all that good, wholesome stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's, while we love you and we want to see you here, if you haven't seen it, then click off and watch this after because you don't want the film spoiled. There's too much happening in the film for it. If it got spoiled, you'd be like, "Oh man." So, fair warning. You know,
Yes,
uh,
you've had fair warning. Everybody. So I'm so excited to be talking about John Wick. Gary Bando Sandwich Worthington says, I liked 1 and 4, but not 2 and 3. Interesting, Gary.
mhm.
Interesting. And it is very interesting as we're looking at the legacy, which I think, Russ, you and I are going to be doing a video on John Wick's IP legacy soon on the Burnettwork. So while I'm out here, you and I are certainly going to be doing a live on the Burnettwork about the John Wick IP cinematic legacy. You don't mind, right? You're fine
Um,
with it.
so I'm fine
Okay.
with it. I've got no choice, have I? You're living here now, so I can't lie and say I'm out because you'll know.
Well,
So
maybe we'll do it tomorrow, even, Russ. So who knows? We just need about an hour to really kind of look at this and set this up. But guys, I have to tell you,
sorry, our Mario asked, "Will all the show be about John Wick 4?" Yeah, I imagine because I saw it
yes.
last week. Rita just saw it a little while ago. So that's the sort of main thrust of today's conversation.
And we wanted to
Uh,
give everybody time to see the film, a week is I think is fair, for seeing it. And I'm sorry, Mario. You know something, Mario? If you want to talk about something else, you want us to bring up something else, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll talk about it.
yeah,
We're not going to say that we're going to completely ignore everything else, but I do want to mention that we're going to have a lot of John Wick talk today. So we didn't want to spoil it for you, Mario. That's what we're saying. Mario, what else is on your mind? If it's not John Wick 4, let us know so we can address that too, if
excuse
possible.
me.
Yes. And Tom says, Gary, I think that dog was related to Chopper from Stand By Me. Really? Well, you know something, guys? It feels like, although it may not be entirely true, but it feels like we haven't had an action film like this in so long. And maybe it's possibly the perfect action film. Um, I'm not saying it's the best one ever made. I'm just saying it's the perfect action film. It's so well made. Russ, I couldn't stop smiling from this film. How cool it is, how amazing it was executed. Just absolutely. Gary says Wick is action ballet. It
Mm,
sure is. It's kind of hard to um say everything in one sitting, or even I could go so far as to say, and Tom Jr. Jackson can confirm this with me, that Catherine, who is Catherine Cook, who is a film pundit, critic, who part of the PGS, I stream with her here on my channel as well as on the Burnettwork, has seen the film at least 4 times, Russ. And
shit.
I thought to myself, wow, if Catherine has seen this film 4 times and she talks about going back to see the film over and over and over again, that certainly is a good sign, Russ. I was talking about John Wick the other day, with Lorena on Ladies of the PGS, and I hadn't seen the film. And to be honest with you, um, it was just unbelievable. Now Mario is talking about Avatar Part Two.
Mhm.
Says he liked it. Thought it was a really intelligent message. Russ, have you seen Avatar Part Two?
I haven't. I haven't
Okay.
yet. But we've got it. We can watch it. Um,
Well, what I wanted to mention about Avatar Part Two, and I am going to keep it brief, is about it, Mario, is that I felt, and I would really like, and Joe, I'm gonna mention your comment in a second. What I liked about Avatar Part Two was the focus on men in the story. I personally felt that men played a very critical role in the story, and I also thought, Mario, that there was a decision that someone had to make in Avatar Part 2, a decision that was critical. And it showed this young man making a decision that was right for him. I thought that was very poignant to show because we saw this relationship. The young character played, I think his name is Spider, had to make a very difficult decision. Sometimes we have to make these difficult kinds of decisions, and Avatar did it in such a beautiful way that I felt we don't get to see this very much. Disney used to do stuff like that, where you had to make an ethical decision. There was an ethical dilemma. And now Avatar is doing it. So, to be honest with you, I was really touched by a lot of things in Avatar Part Two. I love the way that men were portrayed. I love the way that we saw these relationships between the young people in the film. It was a beautiful film. And I agree. I think it was a real intelligent way to send a good message, Mario. Joe Tyson says it's like a live action graphic novel. You know something, Joe Tyson? That might be a very good explanation of John Wick 4. Russ, what do you think? Do you think it was like a live action graphic novel?
I absolutely do. I think, Joe, that's pretty much the perfect description of how John Wick went. Certainly the first one, although with the bulletproof jackets and all that, it stretched credulity and didn't have its tongue in its cheek at all, but it was hyper real. But then as you get into two and three and ultimately four, then they do become essentially comic books, right? There's no way that this is happening in the real world. The action gets bigger and bigger and bigger as each film goes by. So yeah, they definitely, and they're aware that that's what it is. I mean, I think that the great thing about John Wick movies are, although they're serious, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they know how far they're going. With all of this stuff. But I think with those four films over this sort of 10-year period, because it's been 10 years or nearly 10 years, John, the first one came out in 2014. And yes, there was a delay due to COVID and so on and so forth. But these four films have really announced Chad Stahelski, the director, because I rewatched all of them in the run up to John Wick 4, and you can see from right from the get go, he's a brilliant action designer and choreographer and martial artist. Obviously, I mean, I remember him in Bloodsport 2, which is a straight to DVD movies where and he was doing all the choreography stuff on that, and he was in that movie. But here now at the end, as we reach the end of John Wick 4, Stahelski is really in now. I'm sure his phone is ringing off the hook because yes, the first one was great in terms of its look and its vibe and its action, but you can see his sort of maturation as a director as these movies go on. And this fourth one, yes, the action's amazing, and we can go on and talk about that. But the action aside, every single shot, it really is one of those. Every frame is a picture, and every shot is chosen with thought. Like when there's a scene in the Louvre, and the paintings on the wall as they're talking match what they're talking about. So there's all of this subtlety and thought that's gone into this, and each one of these movies, certainly the sequels anyway, are full of homages to action movies of the past. So in the third one, I think it is, yes, it's the third one where he fights Mark Dacascos, in the Hall of Mirrors, like Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. And but this one has got so many things. Like there's a whole bit taken out of the Warriors. There's bits from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, bits from Casablanca. It's just, yeah, it's just awesome, and everybody has been raving about this and saying it's the best one ever, out of the what was it, quadrilogy. Um, I'd say the first one was my favorite, but this one is up there. I think that these are the best two, as somebody else was saying in the chat.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Russ. You certainly do make a good point about this. And Tom Jr. Jackson says this was the best video game adaptation of something that is not actually a video game.
Mm,
And he also talks about the use of Donnie Yen and Bill Skarsgård, who were fantastic in the film, as I guess first antagonist, and then maybe Donnie Yen not an antagonist, or
hmm
maybe just a victim of circumstances, at least in his case.
hmm
And of course, Bill Skarsgård is the baddie in it. Um, Bonzo says, much like Fast and Furious, the fans want it over the top. What's the point if it's not nuts?
Well, that's it. They
Um,
they just keep upping the ante, don't they? With John Wick, like every, it's like how do they think of this stuff? But yes.
Absolutely, Bonzo Kilborn. And Gary Bando Sandwich says Yen is a modern interpretation of the classic blind swordsman Zatoichi.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And of course, we've all seen, I think, some of the very first, maybe perhaps not swordsman, but some of the very first martial arts films I ever watched would be, sort of like and I do remember this scene very specifically of a meditating priest, usually Shaolin or something like that, and someone goes in and disturbs the temple and they're blind, but they can still fight. It was just done so beautifully and, just incredibly good. I mean, we all want to see films like this, but we don't always get this.
Mm.
This was an absolute treat. The last one that I saw that even came close to this, although it was a little different, was Yakuza Princess,
Oh yeah.
which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, we both saw that, didn't we? We were going to review it. We never got round to it. It
Yeah,
was
we
it
we
was it was
didn't, but
pretty
we
good.
will review it this week because I have a feeling Russ, you and I are gonna be doing some reviews this week and next week. Since we're together, we might as well do them. But we certainly are gonna start with John Wick 4.
And I wasn't that pissed last night. What are we going to do into the Snyderverse?
Yes, we're also gonna do that too.
Right, that'll give me an excuse to watch Superman and Batman versus Superman and Justice League again. So, oh god, how terrible.
We're absolutely gonna do that as well. And there's just so much to talk about with this film. Tom Jr. Jackson talks about chapter 5, will it would go? John Wick versus the High Table. Who is this mysterious High Table? So, of course, the High Table is
Right.
an organized crime syndicate. At least that's how I look at it, guys.
So I've got to
Um,
say once again before we carry on, sorry, I'm going to say something now. If you haven't seen John Wick 4, this is going to ruin it. So this is, please stop the stream, go away, or if you don't care, then fine. So here we go. To answer your,
Absolutely, guys. No
yeah,
holds barred for
no
John
whole
Wick.
bar. So this is it. This is it, right?
We're
So
going in deep.
we're going in deep. We're going in full throttle. That ought to get those fighters off our back. Right. So Tom,
Or
I
yes,
don't
go ahead.
want to see one. I don't want to see John Wick 5. Okay. I thought the ending was perfect. It was the only way it could end. I know they've kind of sort of said, well, you didn't actually see him go into the casket, so therefore, he could potentially still be alive. I know that the studio are making noises that they want a fifth one because this has made, I think, $200 million in its first week on a $90 million budget. It's gonna make $300 million, no problem, maybe more. So obviously they want more,
Yeah.
but but this is where if sometimes artistic choice, artistic perfection has to win out over ruthless profiteering. Like you had this with the MCU, right? We were talking about this last night. You had the chance to stop at Endgame, just stop, for 2 years or 3 years, regather your resources and go again. Can you imagine the anticipation if we hadn't had a Marvel film since Endgame, and now they were bringing one out in 2023? People would be going
Oh,
nuts for it, and we wouldn't have this issue
mhm.
with John
Yeah.
Wick. They have. If there was one criticism that I had of this film, and it's a minor, it's a nitpick, and I'm raising it for the sake of being critical. Whilst the action was superlative and amazing, and the fight scenes were just unbelievable. We can talk a little bit about those in a minute. They went on a little bit too long, and there's only so many times you can see John Wick kill thousands of people in interesting ways. So they were going to shoot 4 and 5 back to back, but then COVID, and then all of that stuff happened, and so on and so on and so on. And it looks to me like they took what they wanted from the finale of John Wick 5, what they got, what they wanted to put in for the lead up to John Wick 5, and they just mashed them into this three-hour movie. At no point, stubble, just to say there's massive John Wick spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, duck out, because we're talking about the end of the film. So that's the Stubble McShaver, I just saw pop in. Yeah, there's only so many more things they can do, and I think this was the perfect end. I don't need to see another outing for John Wick. That's where I stand.
Yeah, and I know many of you that you've had so many good comments. Yes, Bonzo Kilborn, I did mention Yakuza Princess. We will be talking about that at some time. Yes, Keanu is almost 57, 58 years old. Yes, he should. I don't see any problem with him playing a Batman. I don't really have a problem with it. Yes, Scott
Best
Atkins.
casting ever. You know, if you were gonna replace Ben Affleck, um, he would be a worthy. But again, Ben Affleck's younger than Keanu, so.
Mhm. And Scott Atkins was incredible in this.
Mm,
I thought that his performance was as good as the Penguin performance in the Batman, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe even better seeing him perform and do all those fantastic stunts in what he was wearing. Tom mentions all three Wick films are streaming on Peacock. Um, and hello, Stubble. Honestly, Russ, I have to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, um, this particular film hit all the right spots for me when it comes to
mhm,
action. And part of what I liked about it was that they destroyed things that you love from previous films.
mm,
They destroyed that hotel. Unfortunately, they did kill Lance, who was a major character, but there has to be some brevity and meaning in these films.
mm,
Everybody can't survive everything. This is, the world doesn't work like that. And I think we saw that in Yakuza Princess as well, where everybody didn't survive everything in that film. There were some people who fell. Unfortunately, there's going to be situations like this, but some of these deaths have to mean something, Russ. And we can't keep having films where some people necessarily survive every single circumstance. And that might be something, truthfully, Russ,
mm,
that will come into question later on here. We see in Rotten Tomatoes, John Wick Chapter 4, 94% audience review, 94% critics review. I don't remember the last time, Russ, that I saw such a high score for both scores. I don't remember the last time I've seen this. And to be honest with you, Russ, the real question is, are they going to have the guts to stick to what's happened in this film? In other words, we don't want to see a resurrection. We did that would, I think, would really hurt this. I
mm,
think they could continue a story where the girl who's injured on the subway, I want to find out where the hell she's going and whether
mhm.
they do actually leave her alone, whether she gets pulled into the table. I think that could be something to pursue. And Russ, we talked about Ballerina. What do we know about that, Russ?
Prequel. So, um, yeah, uh, Cavantino Cavalryman Shay's just shown up again. Cavalryman, massive spoilers for John Wick. If you haven't seen it, it's time to click off, because it will ruin the ending for you. And I'm sorry to have to keep repeating this, guys, but obviously, those of you that have seen it know the ending of it. And if that was spoiled for you before you went in, you'd be annoyed. So So yeah, right, Bonzo. It should end. Yeah. So you asked me about Ballerina. So that takes place before this. So Wick's in it, Winston's in it. I think Lance Reddick's Charon is in it. But it takes place before this, while everyone's still, hale and healthy before they, because Charon gets killed and Wick obviously dies at the end of this one. Um, yeah, things should end, and I think that they have enough of a universe to spin things off, because in this one you had, Sonata's daughter Akira, and you had the fight between Donnie Yen and Sonata, and that's his name, isn't it? The actor. Yeah, I'm sure it's
Yes, she's not
Sonata.
Yen, yes,
Sonata, yeah.
mhm.
You had this epic fight between those, and Sonata gets killed by Donnie Yen. But what I liked about the end credit sequence where Akira, Sonata's daughter, is coming up to kill Donnie Yen, or kill Donnie Yen's daughter, is the sort of cycle of violence never ends for these people. They keep trying to get out of it, and something happens that pulls them back into it invariably. So like Donnie Yen didn't want to kill the owner of the Osaka Continental, but that guy was trying to protect his daughter. Donnie Yen's trying to protect his daughter. So now Donnie Yen kills Sonata, and now Akira is after Donnie Yen or his daughter to punish him for what he did. So you can see that there's more and more and more and more stories and spin-offs and things like that, if they chose to do it. Um, I think with Ballerina, let's see how Ballerina goes. That's the thing, isn't it? If that kicks ass and there's an appetite for more of this, then great. Then let's have more of it. Um, I can imagine them intimating, if these stories continue with Donnie Yen and Akira and all of these people, intimating that John Wick is still alive. Because I think if you're going to do sequels, or not sequels, but spin sidequels, that's it, sidequels. That's what I'm looking for. Sidequels to John Wick in the present day, then you kind of do want the specter of the Baba Yaga. Is he alive or is he dead? Well, I heard that he killed the guy from the high table and faked his own death, and now he lives in harmony on a Buddhist island somewhere. You want the threat of him still been there, but I hope, like I say, I hope he stays dead. That's kind of it.
As far as I'm concerned, I agree. I don't know how I would feel very conflicted. And yes, Tom, I did see the EDM. Thank you, Tom. You know I love that. They did the same thing in the Batman too, so I love that they did that. Um, Cabintino says Keanu was the voice of Batman. By the way, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Tom also mentions there is a post-credit scene. That's right, Tom.
Yeah,
Um, and that's what we're hoping that we'll
that's
actually
what I'm.
get that
Yeah,
film.
yeah. Sorry,
Um,
Tom. That's what I'm talking about, because you see the Donnie Yen's daughter playing the violin. You see Donnie Yen coming up to her with a bunch of flowers, and then you see Akira with a flick knife, and she opens up the blade. You don't know who she's heading towards. Is she heading towards Donnie Yen, or is she heading towards Donnie Yen's daughter? And that's where it ends. And that's perfect. That's sequel bait, or closure bait. Okay, she killed the daughter. Fine. That's the end of that. So we will see.
And Gary says Akira is a pop singer from London in real life, getting this role from the director seeing her pop video. Darth Plato says, "How is John Wick different from The Punisher?" Um, do you want to try answering that one, or
Not
Russ?
it's not it's not very it's not very different at all, except in movie terms. John Wick has satisfied absolutely everybody who likes this sort of thing, and the Punisher films have always been a little bit hit and miss. I've enjoyed all of them. To be fair, I love the '80s one with Dolph Lundgren, because it's the '80s and it's Dolph Lundgren. And then you had the Thomas Jane one, which was a more sort of introspective and less demonic Punisher. And then you had the one with the guy out of Rome, whose name escapes me. Is it Craig? It wasn't Craig. No, it wasn't Craig Fairbrass. Can't think of his name. Anyway, um, the second one, Punisher Warzone, that was superb. It was absolutely superb. It was so violent, so over the top. Then you had the TV show.
Oh,
He,
yeah.
well, he was brilliant in Daredevil, but then his own show, like the first one was good, solid sort of 7, and then it sort of lost its way in the second one. And so their backstories, Darth Plato, are pretty much the same, aren't they? Only that Wick is going after a special group of people, specific group of people, whereas I think the Punisher just has a one-man war on crime. After he's off the people that offed his wife, he then just continues mowing people down. Whereas all of this seems to be done with a sort of specific aim against one group of criminals. So, but
Yeah,
not much different.
absolutely. That was a very in-depth analysis, considering that it was like a spontaneous question, Russ. Very well done. I wouldn't have been able to answer that at all, but thank you for answering it. Tom Jr. Jackson asks or says, John Wick 4 has the best use of the F off, and I love that scene. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
everyone in
Um,
the cinema laughed at that bit actually.
Yes, and, he needed to say it too because, I think that the Marquis, and we're gonna talk about this Marquis, character, who is very interesting, um, and what really motivates him, Russ, and especially I had kind of theorized at the end of the film that someone else would take out the Marquis because they were just so annoyed by him for trying to go above his station, so to speak. At least that's what I thought it was veering towards.
Mhm. Well,
Cavantino
it was
Caravana.
funny watching you watching it because I knew what was going to happen and you had no idea. So like the
Yes.
shock on your face when like John Wick just sort of keels over, and then the sort of like you get the shot of New York, and I can see you thinking, "Oh no, it's going to be fine. He's going to be in the deli and everything." And then they're just there by the graves, and you're like, and you were like, "Fuck, what? He's actually dead." Yeah, he's actually dead.
It's true. I was very surprised by that ending. I thought what would happen is that someone would have just been so angry with the Marquis, like I said, that they would just decide to take him out for the good of the table, for the good of the organization, kind of weed out a baddie who manipulated the rules in his favor, but in a way that no one had any respect for, if that makes any sense.
It
Um,
does, but I would take completely the opposite view. Uh, the Marquis for me is a bit like the dead Ramiro of the high table. Like what he's actually doing is quite correct. John Wick is only survived for so long because of everybody bending the rules and breaking the rules and helping him out when the rules of the high table exist to protect that organization, the organized crime, and the rules are very clear and the rules are very strict. So for me, the Marquis is doing the right thing via his organization. But as Clancy Brown says to him, a man's ambition should not overreach his abilities. So I feel that the Marquis felt with the death of Wick that would elevate him to supreme power in the high table. So that's his motivation. If I can get rid of John Wick, then I will be the man who killed the Baba Yaga, the one that's caused us all of this problem since the Russian guy, killed his dog and stole his car. And that's where all this stuff started. And he's, one of the Continentals has been blown up because of this. How many elite assassins from the high table have been killed? In the course of these three movies, not so much in the first one, but in the second one when the high table were out for him, he's killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of high table people. So for me, the Marquis doing the right thing, perhaps not for the right reasons because he wants ultimate power, but he's doing a job that he's been sent to do. So I didn't have a problem with him.
yeah, it's very interesting that the table itself, or let's say one of the messengers of the table, the one that communicates with, um, I guess people on our level, because none of us are high enough in the chain, high enough in the organization to speak to those in who are at the top of the table. But it seemed as if that messenger from the table was telling the Marquis that they didn't approve of him for some reason. Now, there may be some other history we don't know about for that character, but boy, he was slick, well dressed. Skarsgård was absolutely perfect. He was just so polished, and I do have to give a lot of credit to this production design. of the
Mhm.
film and the
Mm.
clothing. As Lorena says, that suits are like lingerie on men. At least it's how we see it as women. It looks like you're wearing lingerie to us. So it's really so like it's just wonderful to see that. And all the fighting takes place with everybody so well dressed. It looks so good. We saw we saw clothing, well dressed traditional clothing of different ethnicities in this film as we've seen in the past, so beautifully done here. And I even got Russ, I even got my favorite scene in a sense from the previous film reimagined. I love when they decided, whoever decided, whatever production designer this was, who decided to go ahead and have a fight in a trophy room. There is nothing more decadent than having $1 million, $2 million trophy room and
Mm.
then deciding that you are going to have the biggest onslaught of fighting and you just don't even care what happens. It's such a cool backdrop. Russ, why does it look so darn cool to have a fight in a trophy room?
Um, I think all of the fights in John Wick are cool. I mean, that's the whole thing about, even if you think about, I was watching the first one and then the second one and then the third one when MJ was staying here, we watched them together, and I said to, the soundtrack is just so cool. Like the first one is 10 years ago and it hasn't aged out at all. It's just so everything about this film, these films are cool. Everything is done to be cool, and Keanu Reeves is cool. And yeah, I don't know what it is about the trophy room. What I do know is that Stahelski is a martial artist himself, was a stunt double himself, is a stunt coordinator, is an action coordinator, and now is a director. So he knows more than anybody else where to put the camera and how to make those hits look violent. Imagine you're a guy like him in somebody like you're in the Matrix, because he was in the Matrix. Okay, and he was coordinating the stunts in the Matrix, but he's ultimately at the behest of the directors of The Matrix. But now here, he gets to decide what everything looks like. He gets to decide where people stand and how the fights are done and all the rest of it. And that's why they look so cool, because the man is clearly a master of his craft. Like I said a little while ago, that bloke's phone must be ringing off the hook right about now. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if he's been if he gets if he gets courted by Marvel to do Blade or something like that.
Hmm.
Like, can you imagine a Chad Stahelski Blade? Oh,
There's so much to talk about with this particular film, Russ. And I personally, um, you're right. All these fight scenes are extraordinary. I don't think that I can't, I'm certainly not going to go through a martial arts or an action film and say this is wrong or that is wrong. That's not how I approach films. The way I look at it is, was it an entertaining scene for me? And there is none in there that are not entertaining. In fact, the beauty, it almost was ballet, like a ballet, like a dance, like a traditional kata. If you were doing it, sometimes when they're using swords or doing kata, it does kind of look like a dance. Um, but I was just so touched. Then there was a nunchuck scene, and of course, I immediately thought of my brother who had nunchucks in his room. And I remember going in his room and taking out the nunchucks. I'm like, gee, these things are heavy. Let me put them down before I kill myself, and not even look at this. But my brother would always say, "You, if you're going to pick them up, you better know how to use them. Just don't hurt yourself, because you can hurt yourself with these nunchucks." Boy, it felt so good to see a scene with nunchucks in them. And I keep seeing these, they keep bringing back, like, for example, they didn't have to have swords and bows and arrows in this. They didn't have to have that, Russ. They didn't have to, but they had it. I mean,
because it's cool.
this was so satisfying to see a film that is bringing back, all different types of weapons. Um, it was absolutely phenomenal to see that, to see, the arrows, to see the swords. And of course the swords are always wonderful. They made sure that we heard all of those sounds correctly. The sheathing and desheathing of the sword, the swords hitting each other, even the flashing, in a film that's lit a very specific way so you can
Mm,
see very specific scenes. Even the flash of lights against the swords and blades themselves were so perfectly timed. And even the point where the final blow, the final sword blow is done, and the swordsman just stays there and in that firm position before retracting the blade. It's just so good, Russ. There's so many satisfying parts in here. What were some of your favorite fighting scenes, Russ?
Well, it's interesting you talk about nunchuckers because I've never seen them used like that before. I was so used to seeing Bruce Lee et al. Spin them around and do all these like amazing stuff and they're hitting this one guy. I've never seen anybody get held down and just smashed to bits by. I've never seen that. Yeah, just never seen that before. I was like, fuck, that was so cool. And Cameraman chases the duel in the trophy room sounds similar to Homage to Enter the Dragon with Lee versus Han. Indeed, that was John Wick 3 when he fights Mark Dacascos in the Hall of Mirrors. Sorry, John Wick 2 when he fights Ruby Rose in the Hall of Mirrors. So, obviously Stahelski's of a similar age to many of us. He's grown up with Bruce Lee and John Claude Van Damme and all of these people, the same as we have. He was even in, like I said, he was in Bloodsport 2 and 3, I think. So he knows what he's doing, and all of these nods. There's probably a marvelous video out there, because marvelous videos do these kind of thing. All the hidden homages in the John Wick movies that you missed, and I'm sure that there are hundreds of them. And, you can spot them in here. The Warriors is like so obvious. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly at the end is so, the music and the sun and all. It's just
Yeah.
it's not a pastiche. These are homages done right, because if you don't know what you're looking at, if you haven't seen the Warriors, then you ain't going to pick it up. But if you've seen the Warriors, you're like, oh yeah, 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 that's brilliant. And I'm sure there are ones that I haven't seen that you've seen that you picked out. Yeah. So can't remember what my point was. I'm too busy enthusing about how amazing it is.
No, it's totally fine. I also wanted to say, and I should say this, and of course we all already know this, but Donnie Yen has choreographed many, many scenes in this John Wick series.
Hmm.
And to see him, I don't believe I'm not going to say he was not in the previous films. He might have been one of the fighters in many of the scenes in the films, but this one he plays the major character,
Mm.
Russ. A very
Yeah,
important
named
character.
after named after David Carradine's character from Kung Fu, Kane, and
Yes.
but it's spelt the same way. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And to be honest with you, I really thought it was very interesting to see his character and to just kind of appreciate his slick smoothness. Boy, I'm so glad. I mean, we don't know what his fate is, but let's just say for the sake of this film, I'm so glad that he's still alive. Now, it's not that important that he survives necessarily for the fate of the franchise. I just like how things played out for him after the duel, let's say immediately after the duel, where there was this nice twist at the end. But I also wanted to say, and Tom makes a good point of this, and everybody's saying this, as I've always said, they need to make more categories. This is so ridiculous. I saw a bunch of stuntmen in this film, some who were in The Mandalorian, some who were in other shows and other movies. I think the guy who plays Heavy Mando is in this, who
Mhm.
plays Paz Vizsla in The Mandalorian season 3, I think, is in this film. I think I saw that guy. Um, so many talented performances. I would hate to even see just even one or two uh, shelved out, knowing how many stunt people there are. So they'd have to create more than just one category for it. Category 10 stunts, and there needs to be like maybe 10 awards that go to stunt men and women for those categories, in my opinion. um Another thing I wanted to bring up, Russ, had to do with this character that we saw. And I had told you that I thought that this gentleman, I don't have a picture of him. Oh, yeah, here he is. I speak of the devil. Um, he reminded me, and I don't know why, Russ, but I have to, or sometimes think about people in service, meaning in the military, because military people tend to use these Malinois German shepherds. They use them a lot in training. They use them a lot in the field. They use them a lot in dangerous situations. They're trained from birth to, not be fearful of noises of bullets and explosions. They only obey certain commands from certain people. They're very specialized, trained dogs. And I can't help but think of servicemen and women because this character, this man who I don't know anything about, does remind me of a former military or special forces person. Russ, what do you think about this character in the story? You know, he was kind of portrayed as a tracker. What did you think about him?
But I think first of all, the dog motif is strong all the way through John Wick. You know, from his own one being killed to the replacement one at the end, to Halle Berry's, to Alsatians that are attack dogs as well. And now we've got another guy with a dog. Um, this guy, if there was one spin-off character I could ditch, it would be Mr. Nobody. Like I wasn't so drawn to him, but you can tell that whoever wrote this sort of likes him, because there's a lot of hint that he's got problems. Like, he doesn't care about any of this. He just cares about the money. So he obviously has he's in debt to somebody that he's got to pay off, because he had opportunities to kill Wick and didn't take them, but phoned up the bloke and said, "Well, I've got him in my sights, but now it's 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 15, it's 25." He had so he's clearly driven by money. Yeah, but I wasn't. I'll have to watch it again, But my first impression, I wasn't in love with him. Um, Actually, in my head canon, I was thinking, are they going to set up, Akira versus Ballerina? Is that we're going to get some lady assassins going at it, or are we going to set up Akira versus Kane for the next one? I just I think it'd be too on the nose if Akira was to stabbed on a yen, and that'd be the end of it. But I can see her walking up to the daughter and stabbing her and making her get away, which would then, well, she's not wrong, is she? You killed my dad. I'm killing your daughter, and that means I'm going to kill you. And who's gonna come out on top in that particular There's so many ways it can go.
Absolutely. Now, my next question, and I'm pretty sure pretty much everybody knows the answer to this, except me. However, that's okay because I saw something in this film that I've seen before, but I'm not entirely understanding what I was watching. There's two actual things that this really has to do with because it occurs in a particular manner in filming, and of course, I think that in the way that this film was shot, deserves they could probably get a best cinematography nod in
Oh,
this one.
it's
But
just so good. You were saying about action sequences before. Yeah, I mean, that whole scene with the what do they call those fire breath shotguns or whatever they were, the ones with the
yeah, that's
exploding.
what I was about to ask you about.
Yeah.
God. Yes, Russ. It looks like an explosive round,
Mm.
and not only is it an explosive round, Russ, but it was shot from above, as if you were playing a game. For those of us who play video games, that used to look like that at one time, but I've never seen anybody shoot that long of a scene, Russ, with that type of lighting, with that type of round. And it actually magnifies what you're seeing because you can kind of see the impact of this explosive round or whatever it's called, Russ, whatever you called it. That
Yeah, I think
round,
they're called dragon breath rounds or something like that, I think.
well, it makes more sense when you see it from above because you can see the length and space and the effect it has on the unfortunate receiver, and then you're seeing him go from room to room and you're above, and it, yes, Douglas, yes, the angle was unbelievable. It was incredible what they did here. It was just so cool, and you could just see Keanu going through and through it. They did incredible shots. It was incredible scenes. It was incredible execution. The lighting was great. The special effects for us, all that fire looked real. I'm guessing it's CGI, but it looked real, Russ.
Mm.
It looked like people were getting really hurt in these scenes. I've never seen anything like this before. Russ, have we seen this in action films to this extent before?
It looked like it was all done in one take as well. That's the key to the engagement. Like, the angle itself is insane. I can't remember having seen anything like that. Maybe, of course, there has been, but not for that long, not in a single take, not how you see, because it's shot from above. You can see sort of more clearly how they're utilizing the environment as offense and defense as well. You can see the whole thing, like you say, in a computer game. Big Joe saying it's like Gauntlet. Um, yeah, that was the scene of the movie for me. I thought that was amazing. Um, but there were so many amazing scenes. I mean, it was brilliant to see Scott Adkins in there. For a brief appearance, but a brief impactful uh, appearance. But that, yeah, the dragon breath round sequence was amazing. In fact, the whole last hour of the film is essentially three action segments chopped up, chopped, three different segments that last essentially an hour. And it's quite funny how you have all of that frenetic stuff around the Arc de Triomphe, and then the steps leading up, 288 steps leading up to the Sacred Heart, and all that sort of stuff, and all of this insanity. And shout out to Marco Zaror, by the way. He's been working in these films for years and years and years. Big mate of Scott Adkins is Marco, and he just seems to have finally landed his role. Okay, shame he died, but hopefully it will lead on to bigger and better roles for him. His character died, not himself. Well, yeah. What's my point? All of this mad action for the last hour, and then you get the sort of gunfight scene at the end. That's really slow, calm, sedate, no music, just the glow of the sun and Clancy Brown talking, fire and all that. It's just perfect. It's a 10 out of 10. It's
And
just a 10 out of 10.
we're gonna talk about Scott Adkins because as far as I'm concerned, I didn't think it was a short role. I felt, to be honest with you, Russ, I thought it was a pretty incredible role because not only did he have to perform, the fighting scenes, but then he had to kind of like be the sommelier and kind of be
Mhm,
this trickster in the film. There was a lot going on at that table. It We all knew what the inevitable outcome was going to be, but I didn't know he was going to get so physical in that type of an outfit, Russ, because he looked like that character. It didn't look like that wasn't him. I was very impressed by what they did, and I just can't even imagine how Scott Atkins was going to go ahead and execute this because it's very hard to describe it. I know that a lot of times stunt actors pretty much have to do the same thing as the other actors, but I do want to mention that, Russ, it is true that Scott Atkins was wearing this suit and everything, but
mhm.
it was his voice, and that's Scott Atkins. His face had extra weight on it, but it looked like him. So I think anybody who watches action films and is a fan of Scott Atkins would recognize him immediately in that, as far as I'm concerned. I thought that that was very clever to do. They wanted to separate the character or give this character some other attribute or whatever you want to call it. But even with this change in physical condition, the character was still incredibly tough, Russ. He was tough to
Mm.
beat. It was very interesting that maybe, he had the inhaler, this was this was something that, was just so incredible that he just kept going, Russ. He didn't stop. It wasn't sort of like a 5-minute fight necessarily. This was a long thing. And then the precursor to it with the table and dealing with how things were going to go. And my first thought was like, well, this is not a fair game. And I'm like, wait, nothing in here is fair. This is going to be a fight to the end. And we're going to see Scott Atkins perform. And it was so smooth. He's a great actor in addition to being a fantastic martial
I've been
artist.
saying
Hats
it for
off to him.
years. He should be Batman. Titans, you missed your opportunity. Instead of having Ian Glenn, who I love, is a brilliant actor. Come on, guys. Scott Adkins. He literally is Batman at this point. I loved him, and he was brilliant in that role. And the one thing Adkins was really, really proud about, all that stuff with the cards and all those tricks. He learned how to do that. That's him doing all the flicking the cards and catching it and all that. That's actually him
Oh,
doing it, and he
so
was.
he
It
He
was
knows
made
how
up.
to yeah, you
No,
know
no,
what? It's
he taught
not
himself for
sommelier,
this role. He
it's a
taught himself for the role.
croupier.
Yeah,
Not
croupier, yeah.
sommelier, I'm sorry, guys, I'm thinking of wine, that's just forgive me. A
Mm,
croupier is more like what, he was playing in that particular, scene, and I'm sorry, Russ, for cutting you off there. Um, but you're right, Russ, that it was much more involved, very tricky situation, and I really liked it, and of course, the other touch to it was that as a character in this club and knowing very well, um, that it's supposed to be a game of chance, but we know that all the odds were primarily in his favor as the croupier. So it was very interesting to kind of look at that nod to, the classic casinos, or looking at paying homage to something like that because he did it with style. He very carefully moved the cards. He was very graceful with them, someone with a very good hand. Suggests many other things in the story. You expect to go to the betting table having a chance. This was a betting table that no one had a chance at. That's how
mm.
I kind of look at it. Just a kind of a fun spin on your classic casino style game. Um, so I thought it was fun to see that. The other thing that I was going to say is now when after it is true that they fight through the club, and as someone who loves EDM, someone who loves raves, I love EDM. This was so much fun. Now in real life it is not fun when there's a fight that breaks out at the club. It's not fun, but for a good portion of this fight all you saw was them running through the club, and people were like, yeah, partying.
Well, I think that's
It's
that.
not.
I forget who said it earlier on. I think might have been Big Joe was saying, it's like a graphic novel, and that one sequence really does lean into that aesthetic. Like, everyone's just carrying on raving while people are getting shot and the shit beaten out of them around them, and nobody sort of seems to notice. That was really comic booky, but it was
And
part of the whole aesthetic. Something that
it was.
Bonzo said earlier on. You haven't seen it before, but you'll probably see there are many,
Yes.
many knockoffs going
Yes.
forward.
Yes.
You can see it now. They already did one. Was it a knockoff? No. Was it a sidequel? Yes, probably, because written in the same by the same guy was Nobody, who had the bloke from Breaking Bad in it. Um, I can't think of the actor's name now,
Mhm.
but Nobody was a very similar kind of had a very similar vibe. This guy was like a office worker, and he had his own business or something, and they made a big deal of like showing his day. Every day was exactly the same. Every day was exactly the same. Something happens. He loses his temper on a bus, and then of course you find out, like Liam Neeson and everybody else, he's got a certain set of skills. But it was very much the John Wick aesthetic, right? So because written by the same guy, I'd like to think that that takes place in the same universe. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Bonzo. We will now get a glut of these films. They've already stolen a march. Okay, well, we'll do John Wick. We'll do it with the chick. They've already done that. They've already got Ballerina ready to go. We've already got Akira ready to go. Um, but I think the danger in doing a John Wick knockoff is that you will instantly be outed as doing a John Wick knockoff. So it had better be good. It had better deliver on the action. Look, nobody cared that Commando was a Rambo ripoff because Commando was awesome. It's the greatest movie of all time, as everybody knows. So if you're going to do something directly pinched from, or a story about a lone assassin and all these kinds of things, those action sequences that you bring into this had better be outstanding, because otherwise you're going to get lambasted for being a John Wick ripoff and not a particularly good one. So Bob Odenkirk, thanks Tom. Yeah, Bob Odenkirk was the guy in Nobody. So if you're going to do Nobody in the John Wick universe about a different organization, this is a government thing. Probably someone like Nobody would be hunting down somebody like John Wick. I imagine that would be the thing there in my head canon that I just made up. So yeah, it had better be good. But Bonzo, you're probably right. You're probably right that you'll probably see loads of these now, especially just going straight to DVD and stuff like that, which I love. I'm a big straight to DVD fan, but yeah, 100%, mate.
The other thing I was gonna say is, and just to kind of, wrap up the club part, which is one of my favorite scenes,
Mm.
is that no one cares in the club about gunfights. It's true, Douglas, until they bump the DJ table. Now there is no more DJ table, but until the fight starts, they mess up the music. They're like, "Oh, come on, man!" Like
Yeah.
that's where you got to draw the line. That's when they're like, "We're out of here." The music's done. We're out of here. Just traditionally that way. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, and here, of course, is a picture of Scott Adkins, playing the role here as the character we were talking about. So much, just amazing work that Scott Adkins did here. He certainly deserves a lot of credit for pulling off a really scary gangster character. I was scared of this character, Russ, and I think that the fact that I was scared of him indicates that he's able to create that type of animosity and fear you get from a character you should be fearful of. We've
Hmm.
talked about him. We've seen in other films some of the bad guys are not scary enough. They don't have that. Well, this guy I was scared of. He looks like he could really do some damage to you and will have no problem waking up in the morning, getting himself a cup of coffee the next day.
He did
No,
exude
no,
menace. He did a good job of exuding menace, I think, in that
yes,
performance. Like,
yes.
yeah, he's fat. Yeah, he was funny. Yeah, he's doing card tricks. Yeah, he's got gold teeth. Yeah, all of that. But there was this, as I say, he was exuding menace. Scott did a brilliant job. I love Scott Adkins. I want to be Scott Adkins when I grow up. Actually, I look more like him there in real life than I. But yeah, I think he's outstanding.
The other thing I wanted to say, although I'm pulling up a picture of another character who I'm not actually going to talk about just a second for my next point, but I did want to mention something that I thought was very interesting was when they were at the Arc de Triomphe. Now, the first time I ever went that I was in Paris, and I was very, very young, and I was with a friend of mine, and we were walking near the Arc de Triomphe, and I didn't know this, but that roundabout, like, it doesn't stop. The cars constantly go round and round,
Hmm.
and there's a crosswalk that's underneath it. So if you have to go from one side of the Arc de Triomphe to the other, you go underground. It's like an underground passage.
Yeah, and there's a whole shopping precinct down there as well.
Yeah, so I didn't know that. I thought you had to cross through, and they're like, "No, no, no, that's not how you get to it. There's an underground thing you can get to where it is, and then, you don't go into the traffic." So the notion or the idea that John Wick is having an action scene in an area of Paris, by the way, is not insured. If you get into an accident around the Arc de Triomphe, your car is not insured for that accident because there were so many accidents, I guess, over the
Mhm.
years there. So it is kind of interesting that they chose to do that scene where they're going against the traffic, right, Russ? Where the car is getting broken up, where he's getting hit by cars. Man versus car. I have never seen so many man versus car scenes in an action film, Russ. Crushings, knockouts, flip overs, inside the car getting knocked around, parts of the doors getting removed. I think I've seen everything in a car chase, knockout. I can't even imagine what I've been seeing, Russ. How much imagination did it take to make those car scenes, to make that everything that happened in that feel fresh and new?
Well, I think anyone that's going in to see John Wick 4 has seen John Wick 1, 2, and 3. So everybody knows that the laws of physics now no longer apply. Like, it's literally impossible to hurt these people. So they get run over and they're a bit staggering around for a couple of seconds until the script requires them to be, 150% again, and they're all fine. So how much imagination does it take? Well, they've done the car gag before. They just upped the ante on the car gags. They upped the ante on the fast reloads and different ways and all the rest of it. Which, to go sort of full circle back to what I was saying close to the beginning, I don't want to see that again. I think they've done everything that they can and should. I'm sure they could come up with more amazing ideas and parachutes and God knows what else. But I'm done with John Wick. this is the perfect place to stop it. Because how does it end happily for John Wick? They killed his dog already. He's lost his wife already. He's had his revenge on the Russians. He had his revenge on Santino. He's now fighting for his life. He killed the elder. Ultimately, John Wick's story has to end with him being back with his wife, and the only way he's going to get back with his wife is in heaven or hell, as they say. You know, where do you think he is, and so on and so forth. I mean, you don't really want to see him walking off hand in hand with another lady, do you? After the whole film has been about
No, no, it
Helen.
would be weird.
So what do you do with him? What's the point of John Wick? What's his narrative point after this? He's killed the people responsible for killing. For well, unless you find out that it was the High Table that killed his wife, and his wife was actually part of the High Table, and all this, it starts to get all convoluted instantly, doesn't it? You know, what if Helen was the daughter of the boss of the High Table, and then and he wanted John to come back, so he had his own. It's just it's over. I don't need to see any more. It's I'm always reminded. Yeah, cheers, Big Joe. I'm a Kane spin-off, an Akira spin-off. That or I'm fine with all of that. But let's see how Ballerina goes first of all. I'm always reminded of Battlestar Galactica, the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Mhm.
I was going to say the new one, even though it came out in 2003. And at the end of the fourth season, they find Earth, and they find Earth is an irradiated wasteland that was destroyed in a nuclear war. And I thought, that is the place to end Battlestar Galactica. Like, they are never going to get away. Sooner or later, the site that Earth is been blown up and irradiated. We destroyed ourselves. Leave it there, because that was bleak. That was just like really bleak when he picks up the sort of radioactive soil and all that, and the things float away. And I thought, oh mate. But then they did the fifth season, and the fifth season, whilst rounding everything off, was way, way, way too long and was a bit shit. And wouldn't you want to see John Wick end on a low point? Obviously, he does, but a high point. Like it is going to be very, very difficult to top. Yep. Taking over the high table, yeah, Doug. Like, everyone's been throwing out these ideas as what he could do next, but yeah, Mario says here, we'll discover he has a daughter, trains her, and dies immediately afterwards. Any way you go with it isn't great. What's Bonzo saying? I wouldn't mind a brief surprise cameo of him in a mountain somewhere meditating. Well, that's what I was saying earlier on. Like, they can allude to the fact that he's still alive, because if they're going to do these, no, I get it, Doug. I got it. Um, alluding to the fact that a Baba Yaga can't be killed and he's still alive. That would be kind of cool, yes. But his story is told.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention, the part with, Sacre-Cœur and, him having to make it up the steps, which many people, I was with family, in the last time I was in Paris, I was with family, and they didn't wanna walk up the steps,
Well, there is 288. Is that correct?
which is, it's just a few flights. But to be honest with you, I think it's very funny because they made it into a full sequence, and it was a beautiful sequence. It was a night sequence, and I just love how people just rolling down the stairs like it's your worst nightmare, rolling down the stairs. Well, guess what? The hero gets rolled down the stairs about 5 or 6 times. It is so much fun to see this. You are so entertained by the notion of all this happening, and they didn't have to put that in. They didn't have to include him falling down the stairs or anyone else falling down the stairs, but it's still kind of fun to see him falling down the stairs. It's almost like he becomes the butt of a joke of himself, about himself, told by himself. It's just really funny
Well,
when you look at it. Is it
that whole
slapstick
thing,
comedy? Is it action? Is it both?
I don't know, because I haven't seen this, but lots of people have said that whole sequence was inspired by a Buster Keaton
Mhm, yes,
gag.
yes.
So I haven't
Yeah.
seen the Buster Keaton gag, but apparently there's a fight on the stairs and he keeps falling down and trying to get up. And really, the whole sort of story of John Wick is kind of like told out in that. thing, because John Wick's a bit like Sisyphus. Like, he's pushing this rock up the top of the hill, and the rock keeps rolling down. The more he tries to get away, the more stuff that happens around him. So it was like a visual end to his journey. Like, he is Sisyphus. He keeps getting to the thing and he rolls back down, but finally he gets to the top. And yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Or clearly, I'm with you, Doug. I mean, I think it. Yeah, it has been, his story's done as far as I'm concerned.
And Tom is reminding us that there will be the Continental show that takes place in the 70s with three 90-minute episodes. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm interested in that one, or because we know that there's this underworld, underground underworld. We know that there's this underworld of crime. We know that they pay with gold sovereigns. We know that there's a high table. We know, like, piecing together bits of this world and how it operates. The Continental's got to be good, and I fear, or I am concerned that, do we really need to know all about this, or is it going to become really, really silly when we find out about how far-reaching this is? But what I do like about this idea is it's Ian McShane's character in the 70s, and I think that gives you a little bit more. You can have more fun with it because it's in the 70s. I'm surprised it's not in the 80s, because everything's set. That's nostalgia bait these days. But the 70s, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I really want it. I really, 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 really want it to be good. And I think that's my point. That is my point. I want Ballerina to be good. I really, really, really want it to be good. And I hope that it is. But that has the strength. Ballerina has the strength, doesn't it? Have been set in the past, and therefore having Wick and Caron and Winston there to support and give that film much more of a footprint. If it was just Anna Darmas in the John Wick universe, would it be as anticipated? Don't know. Which gets back to what Doug was saying earlier on, and I tend to agree. Although I don't want any more John Wick, I think the hints of him still being alive are enough, and maybe you do see him meditating on a beach, or whatever you happen to do there. But I hope it's good.
well, we got another really cool comment, not comment, but quote. Once again, and of course, the "fu" comment earlier was very funny, but then he comes back with another one where where I think one of the characters has he runs out of a gun, but he's helping John Wick more or less, and the guy who he doesn't have a gun or anything to kind of push or do anything, but he kind of knocks the guy out. I don't remember the move, because to be honest with you, there were so many moves and different martial arts moves in this film that I couldn't figure out what he did. But after he hits him, he goes, "I can hit you," like MF, like it was
Mm.
so funny. I was like, yeah, he can.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just so good to kind of like see somebody say that, because of course the fight isn't over till it's over, as I like to say there. So it was really interesting, and of course the stars of this new Continental show are going to be here. You can see very clearly it's Mel Gibson, along with who plays Cormac, and it also includes Colin Woodell, Ayomide Adjun, Peter Green, Ben Robson, Hubert Pontejour, Jessica Elaine, Michelle Prada, and Noon Kate, where they're just talking about it. And then, of course, Lance Riddick, um, his character will appear as the young man, so
Mhm.
he will. We're going to see this character again. If, unfortunately, we're not going to see him again, as we all know. But it says early plans would have introduced a new assassin, and they are saying what we're exploring in the Continental is the young Winston and how it came to be that he and his team of Confederates found their way into this hotel. And the Continental status now, um, it says it is in post production, and it should be very interesting. Anything else about it? It says while the creators focused on making movies, Lionsgate and Stars presented the possibility to expand the franchise into television. after the success of John Wick 2. We finished the first one. We thought we'd never work on this again. And so, this character is going to be playing a huge role. Obviously, this is the actor who plays that role, but it should be very
Ian
interesting.
Ian
And
McShane, much loved
yes,
in this country. He used to do a show
yes,
called Lovejoy in the
yes,
80s, and he was a hottie when he was young, so all the mums used to love watching, Ian McShane in Lovejoy, yes.
absolutely. And I also thought it was very interesting. Yeah, Tom, you've picked up the quote that such is life. I picked up the quote when he goes up to John and he says, "Just have fun out there." That was that was the best one for me because I just was like, "This is too good." It's funny when people say that they wish they knew the perfect thing to say at the perfect moment. And these were the perfect quotes to say at the perfect moments, Russ. Let's talk a little bit about that humorous side of things that do happen, not just verbally. And we talked about the slapstick part on the
Mhm.
staircase and at other moments. But this flowed so naturally. And some of what we saw, where it was very kind of cathartic to see these little comedic twists to it. Um, I think it's very interesting, um, Russ, for them to incorporate that into a film where I don't even know what the death count is. There's supposed to be a death count for
It's
every
gotta
John
be
Wick.
hundreds. It's gotta be in the hundreds at this point.
This might have been the highest death count that I've seen.
Mm.
But boy, it really feels so nice to see a situation where they can have a little fun with this. And I think that John Wick was looking towards the Cormac character in that look where he's like, any last words or comments or advice or whatever. Um, it was just so slick. He seemed a little surprised when John seemed a little surprised when he found out that Cormac had made a deal also. So it wasn't just, but it seems like in this particular story, there's nothing just riding on one person, is there? A lot of this shows the interconnections in this world, and it's never just one person who's affected. And I think that adds to the realism of it, Russ, because if it was just one and done and you never had to worry about what the repercussions were for those around you, it doesn't have the same level of gravity. What do you think?
I think there's a lot to unpack in what you said there. First of all, with the humor and the slapstick, that was not there in the first John Wick. That was a fucking violent movie about a horrible thing that happened to one guy, and he goes all out and does what John Wick does. There was no fun in that. That was a brutal revenge movie, and it was great. Two, three, and four start to lean, as Big Joe was saying earlier on, lean into them being a comic book, and as such, and I know they said that that was always our intention from the beginning, but as they lean more into that in two, three, and four, there is room to have some fun with this, and they know what they're doing, and they know when their tongue is in their cheek, and they know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. I think I was thinking about this recently. Um, Lionsgate, I think, is emerging, and it has been around for a while. But when you look back at Lionsgate and the stuff that they've been bringing out, they're almost like the studio that I've been crying out for and have ignored for such a long time. They've always been there, just doing this kind of movie, this agenda-free, hardcore, violent, funny action movie that doesn't want to do anything other than entertain you. And I think giving Chad Stahelski $90 million and walking away with 300 or 400 million, however much this movie's going to make, I think this might be map making for Lionsgate. I think with the problems that's going on at Disney, with the floundering that Warner Brothers are doing with their superhero franchise, with Star Wars being where it is, and all these big studios having financial issues, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you got this little company who's made the Expendables. which were great films, and now he's got the John Wick movies. Maybe we're going to see a little bit more from Lionsgate in the future. Um, yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
It does. I think that also, and without sounding too prophetic, I do want to say that the this maybe, if not the first or perhaps the second reason why I love this film is because there are mature men in it. Now, I am not knocking younger men at all. This has nothing to do with that. I think it's amazing how these men can perform. And I also think that this particular series seems to showcase mature, experienced men. And we're seeing them. I'm staying away from saying, I'm not saying anybody's past their prime. I'm listening to Michelle Yao, who said, don't ever let anybody tell you that you are past your prime. It's true. And I'm certainly not saying that this has anything to do with that. What I'm saying is that these men are getting better and better and better. And I think that we used to see things like this, Russ. We used to see stuff like this in old time Hollywood, let's say in the heyday of the studio system, where you had mature men who they would call on time and time again to play roles like this, to fill the shoes of characters that you needed, who could do very specific things, very, very exact, precise performances that usually, not always, but usually would be fulfilled by a mature man. And we're seeing these roles. None of this would be believable with men who didn't have experience. We needed to see that they had things to lose, that they had lives and had investments in relationships that it takes time to build. And we're seeing that. The scene where we see in the Osaka Continental, so to speak, or the Osaka hotel, if you will. What is it? The Chateau Osaka, where the father immediately is thinking about his daughter, who works very closely with him, and she knows what's at stake. But he had to have, he has to be a mature man to even be at this level or at this stage of the game, Russ. Here we also see situations of just having experience in fighting, if you will, or in strategy. We're seeing a lot of this. And I think people really want to see more of this. I think there's a desire to see, the outsmarting, the agility, and the cunning that we're seeing here in these characters being portrayed by men of experience. So I did just want to say that I think we're seeing men kind of really um, looking incredible and certainly performing to a top level. Russ, what do you think about the fact that this movie and franchise does seem to focus on men of experience?
I think that it wasn't me that said this. I think it was the little platoon said this, but he's absolutely right because I thought this, but I can't claim credit for it because he said it. I think on a show the other night that he was on. There is a gigantic market out there that has not been taken care of for the past 5, 10 years, apart from these movies. That's a market of guys between 25 and 65 that just want to see films like this, that we're having things blown up, and at no stage, they probably want to see some tits as well. Let's be honest with you, but that was not part of John Wick. But at no stage is John Wick telling you you're a terrible person, you're a bad person because it has none of that. It's just Keanu Reeves blowing shit up, killing people, throwing them off buildings, throwing them down. Great. It was the same with Top Gun. Hey, no one's telling you you're horrible. It's just Tom Cruise blowing up some enemies. Great. We all love that. That's going to make billions of dollars at the box office. Back in the day, Taken, when that first came out, was a absolute fun. There is a market out there. It's like manna from heaven, thirst water to a thirsty man, whatever way you want to call it. And it has the other added bonus of you can take your missus with you because she doesn't mind looking at Tom Cruise in his t-shirt or Keanu Reeves doing his brutal violent gun ballet, or seeing, you know, a bit of rough like Liam Neeson smacking some people around for taking his daughter, because, you know, women would want their husband to go and do that if someone tried to kidnap their daughter. Fortunately, my husband has a set of skills, and there he is battering people. Loving it. Absolutely loving it. And Lionsgate have done that with the Expendables. I'll be someone in the chat will know. I wonder if Taken was Lionsgate as well. And yeah, and they've done it again with John Wick. And yes, Expendables 4 with the beautiful Megan Fox in it. Let's hope it's good. Because there's another franchise that lost its way. Right? The Expendables. People were going to see the old guys doing the thing. And then in the third one, they're bringing younger people to do younger things. And everyone's like, no, we don't want a PG-13 Expendables with young people that we don't know. We need you to start bringing in Steven Seagal and, you know, what's his name? Thomas Ian Griffiths from Karate Kid. You know, we want these guys. Just give us the old guys back. And hopefully that's what they're going to do in the fourth one.
And Mario Lopez says, we older people are millions and we have money for the tickets. So please make movies for us. Also, Painkiller says, I'm thinking Ian's character was a former assassin that won his way out slash freedom and was given a choice of reward. And he requested to manage the Continental.
Oh,
And certainly I would love to manage a hotel like that. To be honest with you.
sorry, that reminded me of something. You know, when I said, "Oh, there's a lot to unpack there," you were talking about how John Wick looked surprised when Winston said, you know, when he finds out that Winston's getting um, the
The
Continental
bargain.
back, yeah, the bargain. Well, I've mentioned this on here before, a screenwriting book called Save the Cat by a guy called Blake Snyder, who basically gives you a step-by-step guide of what a studio wants in a screenplay. Doesn't mean to say if you follow it, studio will pick you up, but this is how, if you don't do it this way, you're unlikely to get picked up. And he calls this the Covenant of the Ark. Not the Ark of the Covenant, but the Covenant of the Ark. Everybody has to have an arc, not just John. So Winston's character, for a pure writing stance, what is that noise? Weird. Um, Winston's character can't just exist solely to be there as backup for John. He also has to have his own motivation, and his own motivation is to, you know, he was a person of power. He's helped. Well, there's the line at the end, you know, goodbye, my son. Are they intimating that John Wick is actually Winston's son, and therefore that's why he's gone out of an on a limb to help him? But yeah, he has to have his own journey, as Donnie Yen has his own journey, as Akira now has her own journey. And the one guy that didn't was Sonada's character. Like, he was there just to help John Wick, and guess what happened to him? He gets offed because his story has nowhere to go. Like, he's there to help, but his death provides his daughter with an arc. So that, yeah, these are dumb action films, but they're very, very well written. They're very well put together, and there's thoughts gone into it. So sorry, that was what I was going to say when there was a lot to unpack. Apologies.
Certainly, no worries. I also want to say here, very importantly, that I'm going to talk. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the character, the Marquis. So we are to that before the 2 hours. Um,
Sorry, Darth
and
Platter says random nudie scenes were more common in the 80s. They were, and that's why we love the 80s. And they were pointless as
yes,
well. There's the scene in one of my favorite bits of boobs from the 1980s for its utter pointlessness is in Commando, um, where Arnold Schwarzenegger's fighting Bill Duke, and he throws him through a door, and for no reason other than because it's the 80s and you have to have boobs in an 80s action movie. There's a girl and a guy in bed, and the girl's got massive boobs, and she goes, "Ooh," like that. Boobs are bouncing up and down. There's no reason for it, but it was the 80s. Gotta love it.
I liked, and you know the film, Russ, that has Steven Seagal on the Navy ship,
Uh,
and
Under Siege with Erica Eleniak,
yes.
the best scene in any movie ever of all time.
And not only well, she looks fantastic nude. She's beautiful breasts. She looks
She
great in
is.
this scene. She actually, it's true she's a girl popping out of a cake, but she's so graceful when she does it. She's so lovely. And then not only does she get a nude scene, but she even gets to carry a gun. Russ.
Mm.
Russ.
It was unusual at the time. It was unusual at the
Yeah.
time.
I couldn't believe it. She got to defend, and we didn't, it was pointless to have a scene where, yes, you have to carry a gun. Like, we didn't need to see that. But at some point, she's like, well, I'm scared. And he's like, look, this is how you use a gun. Press the trigger. Don't aim at anybody you care about. Go,
Yeah,
like, and I think it kind of showed that while she's stunningly beautiful, she cares
she
about what
is.
happens and wants to survive. This she's not going to hide behind the guys in this thing. She can't. They're under siege. So why not give us it was pleasurable in so many ways. I also
Stubble
when
makes a
it's
good point here, actually. I think that there's a rising desire for non-old IP stories. I would welcome new franchises. Well, yeah, I mean they're very few and far between, aren't they? Well, we've spoken about John Wick, we spoke about the Expendables, we've mentioned Taken, and I'm sure there are. Well, I'll tell you a great undiscovered franchise that is actually a franchise. There's two of them actually. Undisputed, and everyone's like, "Fuck, you talking about, Russ?" There are four, I think, Undisputed films. It's Undisputed that has Wesley Snipes and Michael J. White in it. Is it Michael J. White? Oh no, it's got Wesley Snipes in it. That's the most important thing. And then you have the three sequels, which definitely has Michael J. White in it, and he gets framed up and he gets put into prison in Russia, where there is a guy called Yuri Boyka, who is the world's most complete fighter, played by Scott Adkins. He fights in this thing against Scott Adkins, and then there's a third one that features Boyka as the hero, and then the fourth one that has Boyka as the hero. The little hidden franchise right there. And I'll tell you another great one. Never Back Down. Probably nobody even remembers Never Back Down, but it was a real I think a 2010s movie, a very young Amber Heard in it, about, and it's got Cam Giga High, that's how you say his name, very good looking, yeah, Ving Rhames, that was it. Wex was in the first one, um, and they're in the high school and they have beat downs, and it was like in the early days of video cameras and archaic YouTube, and these fights get put on this video channel, man. It's all on the internet, man, and all that because it was all new, and but then that has a follow up which has a follow up, which has a follow up. And the follow up, the fourth one was about women being enforced in a situation. It wasn't great, but the ones with Michael J. White, yeah, they're brilliant. So there are more franchises out there, but I think yeah, you're absolutely right, Stubble. I think people are looking towards more things. I've heard lots of other people on the YouTube space saying it's not superhero fatigue, it's just shit superhero movie fatigue. Maybe that's true, and maybe that's not true. um, but you do see when something different comes out, a bit like Top Gun. Okay, it's based on a 30-year-old franchise, but there's only ever one Top Gun. Now there's only two. People seem to be lapping this stuff up. They seem to be lapping up the harder edge stuff. They seem to be lapping up the stuff that's for grown-ups, that's not telling them that they're horrible people, and it's not telling them how to live their lives. It's just saying, look, here's boobs and guns and explosions and grenades, and everyone's going, yay, and here's $1 billion of our money, thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree with you.
OG, sorry, OG, for there is a good reason for it. Boobs.
Yes, and there are no boobs in any of these John Wick films,
That is
and
true.
I always say that films need more sex in them, but as far as I'm concerned, seeing the way that the men are in these films is very sexy to me. Um, so there is that. The other thing I was gonna say, and we have OG Fan when Star Wars, which is Star Wars, also Wex Wuther. Hey Wex, and hello OG Fan when Star Wars was just Star
It's
Wars.
quote of the day right there.
Yeah, and he does mention Under Siege, Beastmaster, and some other ones.
Heartbreak Ridge. I'm trying to
Certainly,
remember the bit in Heartbreak Ridge. Was there
I
a
don't
bit in
remember
Heartbreak
it,
Ridge?
but
I don't remember that. I don't remember that. I don't remember any boobage in Heartbreak Ridge.
um, one of my favorite, it's not really a nude scene, but one of my favorite, let's say, exposure scenes, if you will, is in a series called The Expanse. And in the scene, there's a man, he's like in space, and he's speaking to his girlfriend via, Zoom or whatever it is.
Space Zoom.
Yeah, space Zoom. She's on a planet. He's out in the middle of nowhere. And behind her, you can see a guy walking in like a G-string or a thong or whatever the hell it is. And of course, this is a guy she's screwing while
Mm,
he's out in space. And I'm like, this is the best placed piece of like banana hammock footage you've ever seen in your life.
mm,
You don't see the guy's face really. I think you just see his body like walking across behind
mm.
her. And he's like, "Are you having an affair?" And it's like, "Of course she's having an affair, you crazy guy. You're off in the middle of space. What did you think was going to happen? You've probably been gone for like a year." And he like loses his shit. He's like, I don't care what happens. I'm just gonna go in the expanse, like but I just thought it's like sometimes they can cleverly place something like that where it's eye-catching because you couldn't take your eyes off of the guy, but also very funny and entertaining as well. But I did want to talk before we end this stream, Russ, about this character, the Marquis, who is one of the best dressed characters. All the men are so dressed well in this. I particularly loved this scene, Russ, in this stunning room where he has, wealth is important to this man.
Mm.
Wealth and appearances and all this stuff is incredibly important to him. He doesn't care anything else. Did you think he was a strong enough baddie, Russ? What did you think?
Um, him in and of himself, no, not really, but it's really what he represents. And we're talking about the Covenant of the Ark. Like, this guy clearly has ambitions. Like I was saying earlier on, like he's the dead Ramiro of this story. He has been tasked with getting rid of John Wick. And his point is, if I can get rid of John Wick, then I get what I want. I get to move up the high table. I get to be, maybe he gets to be the elder, or whatever. I don't know what happens um, in the high table, and nor do I really want to know, to be frank. Um, so he was suitably slimy, but it was obvious that he was never going to be the physical threat. That was Marco Zaror was the physical threat, and he got a lot of good acting. I really hope Scott and Marco go on off the back of this soon to be $300 million movie. I hope it is. I hope it's the biggest movie of all time. I really do. I think it's great, and I hope that they all go on, especially Scott and Marco, who have been doing direct to DVD movies for their entire careers. It'd be so nice for them as they're reaching, because they're in their mid 40s now, to have like another good 10, 15 years of real high budget good stuff, because that's where I want to see them. But as for the Marquis, he was perfectly fine. He was slimy. He was horrible. He was effete. He was, you just wanted to punch him. So Skarsgård did a brilliant job.
Absolutely. I think he was very slick. I also think that he is someone who wanted to rise up in the ranks, but wasn't willing to pay his dues. Now, this might be the situation as to why they felt that way about him. And I thought about it, and wealth doesn't seem to have eluded him. He seems incredibly wealthy, incredibly well off, like almost like he has not a care in the world. And I almost wondered whether he kind of bought his way in. What do you think, Russ? Do you think for him in this particular case, he his only claim to fame was perhaps maybe he didn't like to get his hands dirty, but he'd pay others to do that, and they didn't like that because, to be honest with you, many of the people in this organization, they're very hands-on, Russ,
Mm.
aren't they?
Um, I, we don't know. He certainly looked like he could handle a gun, but he doesn't look like he's the sort of guy that would necessarily want to be out doing the John Wick work. To talk about the money, though, I really do think that is very much part of the John Wick aesthetic. Like, money is no object to any of these people, including John Wick. Like, you saw his house. Look at his house. It's just, John Wick's house is incredible. It's all about the decadence. It's all about the opulence. It's all about the gold coins. It's all about the Gucci suits and all that sort of thing. It's very 80s in its way. You know what I mean? It's kind of, apart from the fact they're not wearing sunglasses at night, or maybe they are. but that whole sort of decadent opulence and money's no object, and we blew up the Continental, but don't worry, we'll get it all fixed. Because a film like John Wick doesn't need to concern itself with money. So we're just going to assume that they're all multi-billionaires, and this is a billion-dollar criminal organization that has more money than God and can do whatever the hell it likes. It probably runs the government. They're probably the Illuminati. Who knows? Um, but I just think that that whole opulence and decadence, it's a bit like with the Expendables, the whole sort of you know, biker rings and Harleys and cut off shirts and that side of the 80s. That's the aesthetic that they were pulling into the sort of grungy, more grungy side of it. And this is the very much the high table. The higher up the table you go, the more opulent it is. But as I say, even I won't say a low level assassin, but even an assassin like John Wick, his house is beautiful, and it just all plays into it. And as I said, as Stahelski matured as a director over this past 10 years, every frame a picture in John Wick 4, even this one here, it's just so well done.
Yeah, it really is. Rogue Thinker says, I think we should or could have seen, yeah, a fighting with a blade, or maybe even seeing how particular he was, maybe fencing or something crazy like that.
Well, he does mention blades, right? When they have the scene with the tarot cards, with the glass tarot cards.
Yes.
So I wonder, Rogue, did they have that scene in there? But when the film's already tipping towards 3 hours, it's like, do we really need to see a scene of the Marquis with a fencing blade taking out 50 people in a training room, only to have it not pay off?
Yeah. And Tom Jr. Jackson mentions the scene with the hand, and stabbing scenes in the hand are a homage to classic gangster films, the family films, if you
Mhm.
will. I don't mean for the family, I mean the
The
family.
family, yeah.
And of course, the Yakuza who cut off a finger, it's to show dedication. So that was certainly paying homage to that part, which was very interesting to see. But that was about as scary or as brutal as he got there. Um, and Mary Lopez says, I'm getting a lot of spoilers, but it's okay. I really like Sunday Brunch Share.
We
Yeah, I'm
did we
sorry,
did warn
Mario.
you, Mario. We did say at the beginning, please don't listen to this because it's going to ruin the film. Like, hands down, knowing the ending of that film going into it would have really ruined the experience for me. I would have been gutted if someone had popped that one out on me, to be honest with you. So you
Yeah.
were warned, my friend.
We did put the banner at the bottom,
Mhm.
and someone said that they thought, and we could end this conversation by just talking a little bit more about the high table, how, it sounds more like a cult, perhaps. I think that, this high table organization also has a class system, and that might be something else to think about, because while anybody can get millions and millions of dollars, going through the ranks of class is a lot harder being accepted. And it seems like this marquee, that was his major thing, was the acceptance, wanting to be accepted, be good enough to be a person who is higher up on the tier, Russ. So I think that that was pretty cool, because, he seemed ready to accept the position, right?
Yeah.
Dressing the part, acting the part, but not actually being accepted in the part, for whatever reason. He couldn't buy his way into that. Um, and here, Rogue Thinker says, indeed, he should have been a dangerous threat and pay it off with excellent fight scene, but there was already so many other knife sword fights. And Douglas Burton says it's a ritualistic order. So perhaps you have to go through some kind of trial in order to get higher up in the ranks. Perhaps he kind of bypassed a lot of that, and that's why we didn't see it here.
Or did he? I mean, we don't know. And this is kind of where I'm in two minds about this Continental show. It's almost like do I really want to know more about the high table? Or do I just want it left? But we're talking about spin-offs. What about Halle Berry? How amazing was she in John Wick 3? I think it was that she was in. She was amazing. and there's a character, a ready-made character, right there with a killer attack dogs, and Halle Berry, as beautiful as Halle Berry is, she could be thrown back into this mix as well. But as for this guy, I just think he was well, Clancy Brown says it, just make sure your ambition doesn't overreach your ability. That's a direct, or not a direct, but it's from the Clint Eastwood movies, which is Magnum Force. Good man's got to know his limitations. Is basically what Clancy Brown is saying. But to your point earlier on about these more mature men, it was a thing in the 70s, wasn't it? I mean, Clint was in his mid to late 30s when he first started doing Dirty Harry. Could have been in his 40s actually. And then you had Charles Bronson, who was no spring chicken when he first started doing Death Wish, and that was in 73. So it's a trope that they seem to have. Well, it was Stallone brought it all back with Rocky Balboa and the Expendables and Rambo, but back in the day. So yeah, um, we like it, and like I said, there's a huge, like Little Platoon said, there is a huge, huge, huge market of people that will lap this stuff up. You just keep giving it to you, keep spooning me this, and I'll keep eating it.
Absolutely. Now, the final thing that I was going to say is that it does seem that there is once something that I think is very interesting is that we have seen time and time again where families get involved into this organization. It's and not just it like there's a very strong um commitment. If one member commits, all of a sudden your whole family is drawn into it. So it's kind of like almost a self-preservation in a sense for this organization, because if they know that your family is important to you, what you value, then they kind of have you on this hook, don't they? Where, they know that your family's important to you and you've just joined this. And now we know what the most important thing to you is, not you, it's your relative. And so it's a very interesting way to keep people underneath your foot, or underneath, kind of like between a rock and a hard place in a sense,
Hmm.
where they have to they're constantly saying no, but they're forced to say yes to certain situations. And hello, Justin Brown girl. Sure hope you
Is
are
she?
well today. We certainly do like seeing you here. And so, Russ, do you have any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. A little while back, I say a little while back, right at the beginning of this, or in the middle of the show, Mario asked, "Is there going to be a Spartacus spin-off?" And the answer to that is yes. They are working on it at the moment. I saw the announcement. Stephen the Knight's back. Um, don't know when it's going to be set, or any. I don't know anything about it. But yeah, yay, more Spartacus. No, that's never a bad thing. I watched the three seasons recent recently. I watched the prequel and then Spartacus one, two, and three. So the 3.5 seasons, if you like. I have to say, it's not just because of Andy Whitfield, although it is just because of Andy Whitfield. The first season, Spartacus Blood and Sand, is by far the best. The second season with Liam McIntyre is not as good. And it's not as good for two reasons. It's not as good because he's not Andy Whitfield, and he's almost sort of, you're almost sort of prejudging him in a way, like, oh, he's not the same guy, and I'm not sure about this, and it's all a bit. And then by the time you get to the third season, he's very much grown into that role. But the third season is not as good because the way that Spartacus was set up is basically, it's a TV show, and I just didn't have the money, and I just don't think the where the history of Spartacus went just wasn't great for TV under the budget that they were working with. So I just think Spartacus works best when it's contained within the gladiatorial school. I found this. I got away with it for one book when I took my main character out of the arena and put her into like a Spartacus war thing. But the first two took place in the arena, and all of the rules and the hierarchies and all of those things gladiator stories just work better when they're in the arena. Rogue says here, maybe they could talk to you, Russ, and get a female gladiator to spike a spin up. You know, they did talk to me years ago. Well, they were talking about it years ago on Twitter, and I wrote to them and said, well, look, if you're going to rip me off, at least pay me. And then they released a statement that it was a mistake and they weren't actually having a Spartan gladiatrix. It was going to be a warrior woman, which actually ended up. She was in the 2 seasons, and they made her German and not Spartan. So there you go. But I should write to them because apparently I own the movie rights to all my books, which I had no idea. I wrote to my publisher. We were talking about something, and he said, "No, no, I signed the rights off to you because I didn't pay you enough money." I was like, "Oh, fucking great!" So maybe I should drop them a line. Thank you.
Wow, that's exciting and very good to hear. And guys, as you know, check out russwhitfield.com as well as his books, the Gladiatrix series on Amazon. Russ is an author of these fantastic historical fiction books. If you love this era of history, you will certainly love the Gladiatrix series. So do check that out. And Rod Thunderheart is here. Hello, Rod
Hey,
Thunderheart.
Rod.
Glad you loved John Wick
It was
4.
sick, wasn't it? And you've seen it, so no spoiler. We spent most of the stream warning new people turning up, going, guys, if you haven't seen it, don't watch the stream because it was going to ruin the end, and we don't want to ruin the end. So
Absolutely. And Tom Jr. Jackson says, make sure you like and subscribe to Just a Brown Girls Network. She is
absolutely.
here. Just a Brown Girl Network, guys. Just go ahead and check out her channel. She is a movie maker and a very talented one at that. Also, check out Tom Jr. Jackson's YouTube channel. Tom has a YouTube channel. He has reviews of not only John Wick 4, but also Dungeons and Dragons, if I'm correct, Tom. Guys, go ahead and check that out, please. Here's the link for russellwhitfield.com, where you can find out more information about Russ, including the information on his books, the Gladiatrix series, which is available on Amazon. And Darth Plato read Russ's books and he recommends them, guys.
You're too kind,
Abs-
Darth Plato. Thank you.
Absolutely, guys. Please do go ahead and check out Russ's work. And one last hello to Victor Vicman de Santiago. Greetings. Gotta look for Russ books. Absolutely do look for Russ's books, guys. The
Thanks,
Gladiation
Figment.
series. And reach out to Russ on russwhitfield.com. Russ, where can people find you?
Just wanted to say, Doug, yes, the covers are brilliant. I had nothing to do with those covers, but whoever did, the girl that did them, I can't remember her name now because it came through the publisher, but she absolutely smashed it. She really, especially the last one. I didn't know what they were going to do for the last one, and she absolutely nailed it. But anyway, where can you find me? You can normally find me here on a Sunday, or as our own was saying, just drop me a line at russellwhitfield.com, contact at russellwhitfield.com. But more importantly, RM, where can people find you?
Well, guys, this is the cover that Russ was talking about. I happen to be in his house, so I happen to have it right here. And this is the first cover of the Gladiatrix series.
Hey, what
Um,
that? Oh, was MJ reading? But yeah, because it's right. Okay, fine.
Look at that, guys. It looks fantastic. Certainly do check out the books. Here's another one, Imperatrix.
Oh, that's the third one. Yes,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it's my second favorite.
Guys, so certainly do check out Russ's books on more information about Russ on russwhitfield.com, as well as his books on Amazon.com. And guys, you can always find me here on Positive Fandom, where I do all the parlay in the fandom. Of course, our Sunday Brunch show, which you are watching now as we're wrapping it up. But you can also find me on the Burnettwork for Ladies of the PGS and other shows, as well as on Lorena Creole's channel, along with the 1/6 Scale Man Network, guys. I just want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, our moderator, collaborator, and friend, for going ahead and moderating this week's show. Oh yeah, Tom. Yes, there is going to be a Ladies of the PGS this week, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Excuse me, Lorena and I will be doing Ladies of the PGS. So
That's
please
going to
do
be
check
like
that out.
11 o'clock.
Yes, it will be. Yeah.
I'll be in bed.
It will be a late show. Just wanted to thank you all. Oh, look, Mariam wants to know, is there an audiobook for
No, they
Gladiatrix?
didn't. And also the ebook transfers are really shit. So like, where you have like a little star to sort of break up the action, so there'd be like one bit's happening here, and then you cut to somewhere else, and people put little stars or a little break. All of those got missed out, so all the text just runs onto each other, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So try and, if you're going to get them, get the paperbacks, I would say, and you can get them for like a penny on Amazon now, so they're dead cheap, like secondhand. Go for it.
And Dino the dinosaur says, "Hey, Russ, I rewinded the fight in the bedroom many times on the
He's
old
talking about
VHS."
Commando.
um, and guys, I do want to mention. Oh, interesting. Cosplay cosplay coins from John Wick are available online. Thank you so much for that, Kevin Tino. Just want to thank everybody for showing up today. You too, Rogue Thinker, says, have a great day and farewell to all. Guys, I really do appreciate you watching Sunday Brunch every Sunday with us. And I just love doing the show, have a lot of fun doing it. Hope everybody out there is well. Oh, Rod Thunderheart also is an author, guys.
Hmm.
Don't forget, he has his books as well. You want to check out Rod Thunderheart's books here. Um, he has an audiobook for See Through Love. He's working on that. See Through Love is his book that you can
It's in
find
my
now.
in my head canon. Rod Thunderholt sounds a lot, like Barry White. I can just imagine him having that kind of voice.
Absolutely. Rod Thunderheart, such a pleasure to see you as always. Stop by anytime. We are so happy to see you. There is a Let's Get Physical Media today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific. Wex Wuther, have a great week, guys. Thank you. It's on Friesen Press and Amazon for Rod Thunderheart's book, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe to all the creators out here on the channel, as well as pick up those books, guys, and support our fellow creators and everything they do. I just want to thank all of you again for tuning into Sunday Brunch. Guys, as always, thank you so much. Hey, Chronicles. Thank you so much, everybody who has showed up today. And remember, guys, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind.
See you later,
Take
guys.
care,
Thanks so much
everybody.
for tuning in.